Welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. I'm your host, Rob, joined this week by Dave. Another off-season pod as we roll along here. Man, these long off-seasons are tough, aren't they, Dave? We did kind of get used to, at least for a few years there, some consistent playoff runs and doing, playoff podcasts into late April and May. So, but we're rolling along. Plenty to talk about. And I do want to, I want to say hello to you and exchange pleasantries. But the Knicks are in the NBA Finals, which is just amazing, and I think that has to come first.
Yes, it does. At least one team in New York is somewhat good, and I find it interesting with the Knicks that every sport in New York has multiple teams, every single one. But the Knicks are the only team in New York that unite everybody, and nobody remembers that the Nets play in Brooklyn. I think there's 8 Net fans in the entire New York City area. So I love that the Knicks are actually doing what the Knicks should be doing. And
yeah, that seems like the whole Brooklyn thing. I mean, I get why it happened, and they were the New York Nets when they originated in the ABA, but New Jersey did seem right for them. They did very much seem like the basketball devils, and to be fair, they had some really good years in New Jersey. They made back-to-back finals in the early 2000s, like right after the Knicks started falling off. I feel like the Brooklyn thing was a very short-sighted, almost typical venture capital type of move. I know they're not owned by venture capital, and Jay-Z was involved, and they had that Russian oligarch owner for a while. I don't even know who the hell owns the team anymore. But the point is it just seems better for everybody if they're in New Jersey. It kind of is the right place for them. I think they did have some fans in New Jersey. I had some friends growing up that were Nets fans. The Brooklyn thing, like I said, I think they thought they were taking advantage of a situation with the Knicks that was going to last forever. I think they figured the Knicks were just going to be irrelevant for 50 years and just suck for 50 years. And, look, they kind of got halfway there. They sucked for about 25 years, but, long live Leon Rose. And, as we get into the Ranger talk here and we talk about, the first thing we'll talk about is, Vince's latest article on The Athletic about, the Rangers, quote unquote, wanting to make a big splash. As exciting as that seems on its face, the main thing that I keep coming back to when I think about the comparing the Rangers to the Knicks is the fact that the Knicks operated with so much patience, right? This was a 6-year-long process that got them to the finals with a legitimate chance to win it, right? This isn't just like, oh, we're happy to be here. Like the Knicks won that game on Monday night and every guy was like, yeah, like this is cool, but we have to win 4 more games. There was no, obviously they do the trophy presentation on the court, but everybody was very kind of muted and business-like throughout that celebration. They want to win a championship. I also think, no one's thinking about this, of course, in the midst of all the excitement. I think they can be in multiple finals and compete for multiple championships. This core is going to be together for at least the next 2 or 3 years. So, you contrast that with the Rangers and wanting to do this quickly and wanting to make a big splash. And I just want to make sure that, as exciting as that is, that, Chris Drury maybe tries to learn something from his counterpart in Leon Rose and maybe try to be a little bit patient with this stuff because it doesn't happen overnight.
And something to know about the Knicks, Leon Rose had 0 top 10 picks to work with.
That's exactly right. And I think what was interesting about the way the Knicks are built is it's all free. Not all. Some of the role players are draft picks. Mitchell Robinson, Deuce McBride, but everybody else was acquired. What?
Mitch Robinson broke his pinky.
I know. We'll see how serious that is. Hopefully it's not, and he can play with it, but I think it depends on the nature of the injury. That is not great news. The Knicks need him because they are going to be underdogs in the finals. But no, I think, Dave, we've talked about this a lot over the years where if you look at Vegas is not built through the draft. Florida is not built through the draft. But you have to be smart when you execute those trades, right? the I think look, the two sort of signature Knicks trades are, I mean, there's three of them. One of them is Mikal Bridges for 5 first round picks. Those trades don't happen in the NHL. They really can't. I think you can only trade 3 drafts out. So put that one aside. That's a weird NBA only trade, but they brought in OG Anunoby for RJ Barrett, who was drafted 3rd overall, and Emmanuel Quickly, who was also a first round pick that the fans absolutely loved. He is a bona fide scorer. He's a very good NBA player. RJ Barrett is clearly like, kind of has his ceiling is like maybe 3rd or 4th best guy on a contender, like a very, useful piece. But they traded him for OG Anunoby, who is, one of the best two-way players in the NBA, who hadn't fully actualized his game, but would certainly had that potential. They traded Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo for Karl Anthony Towns, who was a legitimate bona fide star in his prime, former 1st overall pick, one of the best big men in the league, enigmatic, imperfect player, but the Knicks are also getting the most out of him now with coaching, and good team kind of cohesiveness, and the pieces are just all fitting together. My point is if you're gonna build like Vegas and Florida or like the Knicks have, you have to execute the trades. And I can't help but think, after last night's performance by Keandre Miller, where, basically the entire, league was singing his praises and saying this is the best he's ever played, that is a perfect example of a trade that I didn't have a problem with the Rangers making it, but what do you get back in return, right? You end up with a 1st round pick. We'll see how that goes. And Scott Morrow, who right now looks like an AHL, NHL tweener. Next year is an absolutely huge year for him, and for that trade, because if that trade turns out and stays on the track that it looks like it's on right now, that is a pretty big blunder by Drury. And it's the type of trade that, if you want to build that way, as I said, and not rely on draft picks and kind of that long-term build process, you need to nail those trades. And that one looks, at least early on, like a miss.
I think we have to account for the cap space that trade generated to
Yeah,
sign
I think
Vlad
that's fair.
Gavrikov.
I think that's fair, but why not? I think the counterpoint to that is, why not just pay Miller and make him your top pair left defenseman next to Fox, which in plenty of stretches was the best defense pair the Rangers had
Oh,
between
absolutely.
2022 and 24.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. I didn't mind the trade when they made the Keandre Miller trade. I
Neither did I.
thought not highly, I thought higher of Scott Morrow than most, because I felt that his playoff performance was not as bad as people thought, because he was on the ice for 5 goals against, but his possession metrics were solid. And it was clear he had defensive deficiencies, but was a solid puck mover. And
Yeah.
I think half of this is also just letting kids play through growing pains and being willing to accept mistakes, especially next season, which is a lost season. They have to
Yep.
figure out what they have in him. And that's something that I don't follow the Knicks as closely as you do. But I'm assuming the Knicks, with their draft picks or with their trades, they just let these guys figure it out.
Yeah.
And they didn't just neuter them and, well, you can't send to the AHL the way you can in the NHL, but they didn't just bench them.
No. Well, no. And I think, look, one of the, I think issues with last season, right? The Knicks made the conference final and lost in 6 games. But the games were so much tougher. I mean, that's what's remarkable about this year, as everybody knows, is that they've completely blown everybody out in every game. And they look like one of the truly dominant teams in the league. Yes, the Eastern Conference is somewhat weak, but this is nothing to sneeze at what they've accomplished. And, these are usually very hard games. You're usually getting the other team's best. So last year, it was a question, Dave, as to whether or not those 5 pieces fit, the 5 starters. Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Hart, and Towns. And the underlying numbers weren't good. A lot of times the Knicks, again, were winning by the skin of their teeth because Brunson's just a magician. He's one of the best, scorers in Knicks history and NBA history. The guy's just crazy. And that's why they made the coaching change. And then even this year in the playoffs, they lost 2 out of the first 3 in the first round to Atlanta. And a lot of people were calling on the head coach, Mike Brown, to bench Mikal Bridges and try something else with the starting lineup. People were just like, hey, this doesn't work. We saw it last year. It's not working this year. And he stuck with it. And it's a lot harder to do that in a playoff series than it is in November. So to your point, when you're the Rangers. So I agree with you, Dave. Like, to your point, I think the best way forward for the Rangers is, you have to figure out what you want to do with Braden Schneider. I think it makes perfect sense to trade him. You have Will Borgen in place. I think Scott Morrow has to be your opening night third pair right defenseman. And you've got to give him the leash to go out there and play 15 to 17 minutes a night and see what he can do. Now, look, I would like for them to find a good low cost veteran to pair him with. I don't think, putting Matthew Robertson there makes sense. I actually think you probably should put Robertson with Borgen, and see how that goes for the first month and a half of the year. But I think they
Ooh,
got to
that's
go try and find I know it's he's not the same handedness, but a Jeff Petrie type, right? Like one of those low cost, just long time NHL guys that never cost more than $2 million a year to play with Morrow and just be like, hey, rely on this guy. He is as steady as you can find in the league. Do your thing, move the puck, play offense when you get a chance, but stick to your fundamentals and really be solid defensively. And let's see where you stand by Christmas. You got to, like you said, you
so
got to find out what you have at him.
so I have something that I said last week to JL that he actually didn't do his usual JL thing whenever I suggest something. And he actually said, "Oh, I actually like that." So I'm going to run it by you too. Split up Gavrikov and Fox. You put Gavrikov with Morrow. Gavrikov is one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL, and he can most certainly cover for Morrow's mistakes and help guide him. And then you put Fortescue with Fox, who can play with anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
now you have two of the best defensemen in the NHL. I think Gavrikov, if he had offense to his game, would be in a different conversation. But he's still he's a top defensive defenseman. And then you have Adam Fox, who to me is a top 3 defenseman in the NHL. You're spreading out that defensive depth. You're getting the most you possibly can out of your lineup, and you're going to bring along 2 kids that you have banked a decent amount of your future on by
Yes.
trading Keandre Miller for Scott Morrow, who was a key piece in that deal. I don't care about the first round pick. The point was to get Scott Morrow, and
Mm-hmm.
then you burned a year on Drew Fortescue's entry level contract. You got to
Right.
figure out what these guys are, and you have 2 premier defensemen who are right for this specific role, especially if people think Fox is going to be the next captain. Let's see, assuming he doesn't request a trade, let's see what exactly they have in both the leadership group on the blue line and these 2 kids.
I don't hate the idea. I think what you would, I think as always with the Rangers, it comes down to, is it a rebuild or is it a retool? Is Mike Sullivan the right coach for the team in this moment? Right. Because again, and I'm going to draw a lot of Nick's parallels because I think they're actually very informative. Right. But like the whole point of Tom Thibodeau, when he was hired, um, was that it was supposed to raise the floor and help the team develop, right? He's very much like Torts. Now, Torts right now is doing something with Vegas that, I won't say is totally unexpected because Vegas has a championship level roster. And I think it was just Torts was brought in to basically wake them all up because they were in a stupor for 75% of the year. But when Torts coached the Rangers, the whole point was we have this young team. We know we don't have elite talent, but we're going to develop it and get the most out of it. Sullivan, I just don't think that's what he's here for. I think he's here to try and make the playoffs and make runs at the Stanley Cup. And this roster is not that level at all. I could say yet and sound optimistic, but that's not what this roster is. I think if they had a different coach, if they had a younger coach, if they had some time and they weren't operating under these, tight timelines, even though, no one's ever going to commit to what does a retool mean? And does that mean 1 year or 2 years or whatever? I think that would make perfect sense. And I think that, the other thing is, look, I know Fortescue is young, but he played a lot of college hockey. Keandre Miller stepped right out of college and played with Jacob Trouba, right? He was one of the Rangers. Maybe he was the highest paid defenseman before Fox's extension. He was obviously going to play huge minutes in a shutdown role. And Keandre is a very young player, did pretty well. His game was not without flaws, especially his first couple of years in the league, but he did pretty well. And I think the Rangers did at a time when they were trying to compete and go for the cup. They entrusted a young defenseman with a lot of responsibility. Maybe they'll feel the same way about Fortescue. And I think, it's not a bad shout. I mean, the other idea is Robertson, right? Robertson can move the puck and move his feet. He's got size. He's Lindgren like in his play style. I think he's a little bit smoother all around than Ryan Lindgren ever was.
He's a very
Um,
good skater too.
he's a very good skater, and again, I know he wasn't perfect last year, but nobody was. You put him with Fox, him or Fortescue, I don't care. I like what you're saying. And then I think you will only learn about Morrow if he has a steady veteran partner, and there's no better version of that than Gavrikov. So it's a good idea.
Thank you.
It is a good
And
idea.
this also takes some of the pressure off of needing to get an immediate piece for Trocheck, somebody that on the blue line, or Schneider. You get to take a step back and look at what you already have,
Hmm.
and you can get somebody for Trocheck or Schneider that's maybe a year or two away. Because the Rangers next year, their season is lost next year. I hope Chris Drury and Mike Sullivan recognize this. They're
Yeah,
not
well,
gonna they're not gonna be a legitimate cup team. They may squeak
no,
into the playoffs, but they're not a real team next year.
I think everybody would be happy with that too. I think the whole point of next year is to not do what they've done the last 2 years, which is go 20 plus games looking like one of the worst teams in the league. Look, everyone's going to struggle, but they have literally, poured gasoline on their season and lit it on fire in December. Like it's over by Christmas the last couple of years because they lose their confidence. And then they can't get their act together for 2 months. So I think the whole purpose of next year is, be an average NHL team, stay in the fight, stay in the playoff hunt, have some spine when things don't go well. Don't just crawl into a corner and die for 16 games or 18 games like they have the last couple of years. That to me you're passing the test if you can hit that mark. And then you're probably going to find yourself 2 points out of a playoff spot or 4 points out of a playoff spot with 8 or 9 games to go. And that's fine. I agree with you, Dave. But you're right. They do need to find out more about the young players on this roster. And I think this is something we've talked about. I don't think their defensive prospect pipeline is as bad as people think it is. Because again, we've talked about EJ Emery, Fortescue's in there. Schneider has proven to be, potentially an NHL body. So to your point, they don't need to go
Jackson
out.
Darrington is somebody
Right.
nobody's talking about. I
Jackson
really like
Dorrington.
that kid.
Yes. So there are people in the pipeline that I think could contribute within the next season or two. And they don't need to go out and make a big time move for a defenseman. I prefer they don't. It doesn't make sense right now. But look, do you add the right low cost veterans, veteran or veterans to be your 6, 7, 7, 8 defenseman? Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. But there's a lot there to play with. So yeah, what do you make of Vince's report about the Rangers wanting to make a big splash? I know we kind of like talked around it with the Knicks comparison, but what's your takeaway from that? And does it make you feel nervous or excited, I guess?
I don't feel anything about it. And I know that's a bland answer, but the reason is we hear this every fucking offseason.
Yeah,
There's
we
going to
do.
be major moves, there's going to be major trades, there's going to be a whole lot of action. And then what happens? Everybody does the exact same fucking thing. They stick to their draft positions. Nobody gets traded, and everybody runs it back with the exact same fucking teams that they always had. And that's why I looked at that and said, yeah, I mean, no shit. The Rangers obviously want to make a big splash. That's why they held on to Trocheck. That's why they're making Braden Schneider available. They want to see how this unfolds. I do not think the NHL, at least as currently constructed with the current GMs, I don't think they're willing to make these kinds of moves. There's maybe 2 GMs that are willing to do it, and one of them is Eric Tulsky
Mm-hmm.
in Carolina, and he doesn't have to do much anymore. So I don't really know what to make of it other than I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, that's my thing too, is that the only moves that these teams seem to be comfortable making are the deadline moves where you're just copy and pasting last year's prices into this year. Maybe there's slight changes based on some weird mid-season trade, but for the most part, it's like second round pick for X, middle six forward, or third round pick for, Y second pair defense. Like it's very formulaic. And you just don't see a lot of creativity. Now, that said, the Athletic did put something out. So this is separate from Vince's article, that executives around the league, right? So no named sources here, but just a sort of like smattering of NHL execs think that this is going to be a very active offseason, because even with the cap going up, there are lots of teams that are going to be motivated to move off of big salaries to that want to again, like you said, Dave, kind of want to make bigger splash types of moves. So they put out a trade board. There's 25 names on it. I'm not going to read every single name, but just to give you a sampling, right? Vincent Trocheck is the number one name on this list. They actually list a couple of draft picks because apparently the Sharks are listening on the second overall pick and the Blackhawks are listening on number 4 overall. Mason McTavish is on this list. Matthew Nyes is on this list. Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou are on this list. I mean, man, it's wild that the Blues are what they are with those two players at the top of their roster, but so it goes. Ryan Hartman is on this list. Jason Robertson is on this list, but he's the last name at number 25, which indicates to me that there's a slim possibility of that type of trade happening. Interesting that Braden Schneider's not on here. I know he's not like a huge name, but certainly that's somebody who's been talked about a lot over the last few months when trade rumors come up. So, Dave, I know you had a chance to look at this list. What name potentially jumps out at you as something the Rangers could or should look into?
Mason McTavish.
Why? So why? I mean, he got scratched in a couple of playoff games, right?
I don't think it was playoff games. I think it was regular season games.
Okay.
He is 22 years old. He's already signed long-term to a $7 million contract. He took a big step back this year. And to me, he reminds me a lot of the way Mika Zibanejad was viewed in Ottawa before the Rangers traded for him. And that's it's not that it's a guarantee that Mason McTavish is going to be an amazing player for the Rangers. It's that this is the type of trade you should be making.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to fault Drury if he goes out, swings on Mason McTavish, and you could record this, clip this, whatever you want, hold it for if this happens. If they go out and make a big swing for Mason McTavish, they get a good trade out of it, they don't overpay, and then it doesn't work out, then you know what? He swung for the fences on a 22-year-old potential top 6 center.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Shane Wright.
Right. I was to say, basically, yeah, McTavish, I think, has more upside than Shane Wright at this point. But yes, it's the same thought.
And if McTavish is truly not seeing eye to eye with, I think it's Todd McClellan over in Anaheim, right? Who's the coach in Anaheim?
Quenneville.
Oh, it's Quenneville? Oh.
Yeah, Quenneville coaches the Ducks, yeah.
You know what? I should have known that. That was my brain clearly isn't braining. But if McTavish is not gelling with Quenneville, they're going to choose Quenneville.
Yes,
send
100%.
Whatever the hell you need to send over there to get Mason McTavish. But Trocheck's not going to waive to go there, so I'm not entirely sure what that trade can look like and if Braden Schneider carries that kind of trade value.
Right. Let's each pick. I'll pick a name, then you pick it. We'll do this a couple times. Matthew Nyes is my favorite player on this list. And that's saying something because I really love Robert Thomas and I really love Jordan Kyrou, but Matthew Nyes was like the one guy when I was watching the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs a couple of years ago where I was like, that dude has it. Like he does not shrink in these bigger games. He's not letting the pressure get to him. He's clearly got top 6 talent, but he's frankly, like he's the exact type of forward the Rangers covet, right? He plays with an edge. I think he's probably a bigger body. I want to look up his measurables now, but he is also the one name on the list where I'm kind of like, why are they trading this guy? Yeah, he's 6'3", 232, so he's a massive human being.
Wow.
Yeah. He already has seasons of 15 goals. That was his first full year. 29 goals, 58 points. In his second year, that was 24-25, and then 23 goals, 43 assists for 66 points last year on a bad Maple Leafs team. And again, I'm kind of like, why are they trading this guy? But I mean, I think, look, there's a chance of they're going to draft McKenna, and I think, to me, man, like if Vincent Trocheck would go there, and I don't know if Toronto would be on his no trade list or not, like a trade built around Trocheck and Matthew Nyes makes a ton of sense because, you know, the Leafs want to show Austin Matthews like, hey, we are committed to turning this around quickly because they're worried about losing him. Him and Connor McDavid are closer to moving, I think, than people realize. You bring in Trocheck, who is a low cost player, and he slides right in as he would basically is a captain type player. Obviously, Matthews is the captain, but he's clearly the top assistant captain right on that team if he goes there, and he kind of gives them instant credibility, and which is something that they've lacked, right? Even when the Leafs were highly talented and running through that division, nobody really took them seriously. They didn't have any credibility because they hadn't won a playoff series in 20 years. And, there was always these questions in that market about, is this team built right? Can they actually get this done? And clearly they were not. So I don't know, Dave, like, more about this stuff than me in terms of the value and the mechanics. I don't know if a trade around, that's built around Trocheck and Nyes works, but that in a lot of ways, that swap makes sense for both teams.
That's the only way it can work because the Rangers have nothing else.
Right.
And I think it only gets done if they add Braden Schneider to it as well. So do you want to throw all your eggs into the Matthew Nyes basket, who, yet he's great. I'm going to throw the caveat that he's a winger.
Yes. No, I understand that, but also this team needs
they need
everything. They need. I mean,
yeah.
He to me becomes the second best, maybe the best winger on the team the second he gets here. Well, whether or not you want to think, he's probably the best winger, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Lafreniere hasn't had 66 points yet. Gabe Perreault's a second-year player. He's the best. He becomes the best winger on the team, and you're betting on him having an 80 to 90 point ceiling if you make that deal.
And you're hoping that he plays alongside JT Miller and reawakens JT Miller, whatever the hell that last season was. Right. And then you got, assuming that Lafreniere or Perreault are not a part of this deal, now you have two legitimate top lines. Because Will Cooley on that second line, I can live with Will Cooley on that second line of Matthew Nyes is the focal point of the offense. Because Cooley can play like a Kreider role, kind of distract and get to the front of the net.
Right. And that's also, if again, in this hypothetical world we're living in, that second line is, Miller, Nyes, and Cooley, that is a massive line. Cooley's a big player. Miller is a bigger player and plays big, especially at this stage of his career. And as I just said, Nyes is 6'3", 230. Like, that is a massive line. And that is, look, the Rangers have been obsessed with size for years. It's been even more emphasized, with Drury. If you're going to get bigger players, get me guys who can also score 60 to 80 points as opposed to just guys who are big for fun. So, I'm down with that. I would love Matthew Nyes on the Rangers. That's on this list. That's my favorite name. All right, give me one more off the list that you like or you think might make sense for the Rangers going into next year.
Elias Pettersson for JT Miller, 1-for-1.
Just to the world burn.
You know me, I love chaos. You know what? I'm gonna go with the Sharks' second overall pick. Yeah. Not because of the player, or because let's be real, if the Rangers make that trade is to get Ivar Stenberg. It's because
it's a guarantee they get him.
Yeah, it's a guarantee. It just makes too much sense for the Rangers to trade the 5th and Braden Schneider to San Jose for the second overall. And then they take Stenberg. The Sharks get Schneider, and then they get one of Carroll's or Reed or Verhove. And now they've added 2 huge pieces to their blue line that they desperately needed. And they didn't sacrifice anybody from their roster. This seems like a no-brainer for them.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm trying to figure out, these trades never happen. I can't remember the last time somebody traded into the top 5. I think it was actually the Rangers in 99.
Yeah, I think it might have been.
So it just hasn't happened. And this is why I go back to what I said earlier, I don't think the NHL GMs, as we currently see them, have the guts and the creativity to pull something off like that.
Yeah.
And to those asking, is Braden Schneider really worth moving up just 3 spots? Yes. To
Yes.
guarantee Stenberg trading a negative asset? Absolutely.
100%.
But
Um,
in terms of players, because I feel like that was a cop out, I'm looking at, you know what? I'll be a little creative here. Let's go with Darnell Nurse.
I was hoping you were going to say this because you talked about it off air, and I actually love the idea.
Take him as a
But I
cap
didn't
dump.
want to. I didn't want to steal it from you.
Take him as a cap dump. Darnell Nurse is a solid defenseman still. He's 31. He's his metrics are great. I actually looked into this when I was writing a Patreon post the other day. And his defensive metrics are solid, but he's making $9.2 million for the next 3 seasons. So he's a little overpaid,
Mm-hmm.
but he stabilizes the left side of the blue line again with Gavrikov. So he fills a need. And at Anaheim, Edmonton clearly needs to clear cap space. So can you say package Nurse and maybe pull in Matthew Savoie? Savoie? Is that how you pronounce his
I
name?
think so. Savoy. Yeah.
Savoie, whatever. Can you take that and throw them a couple of your third round picks? Because now you're taking $9 million in cap space that they need to re-sign a bunch of guys, and maybe they go and add Alex Tuck with that money. Maybe they go and add Darren Radish with that money
Mm-hmm.
and fill out holes in their roster that they desperately need. And maybe the Rangers throw in, I don't know, Adam Edstrom or some shit like that because they need depth forwards too. And you weaponize your cap space. That's something that Chris Drury hasn't done yet, is weaponizing his cap space.
Yeah.
Throw a couple of picks and something tangible. Brett Berard. We'll go Brett Berard
Right.
for Savoy and Nurse because now it's a true salary trade.
I think that's really interesting. I do wonder about, you do have to stomach that cap hit for a long time. It's through the 29-30 season. So that's actually what? It's like 4 more seasons. Yeah, 27, 28, 29, 30.
Oh, it's
But
4. I'm
it's
sorry.
four
Yes,
it's
it's
4
4.
more seasons, but the cap's going up. Nurse is still productive. You all of a sudden, I still don't love the right side of their defense, obviously, and we just talked, at least somewhat optimistically about Scott Morrow,
Put
and
Nurse
who
with
else do they have?
Morrow.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? I mean, you want to talk about Fox Gavrikov. Let's even put the whoever his partner would be aside. Fox Gavrikov Nurse. I worry about it being slow, but I think Nurse still moves pretty well.
Mm,
I can't speak to like I know he was a very good skater when he was a younger player, and I can't believe he's 31 already. I would have thought he was still in his 20s, but um, it's interesting, and I think these are, to your point, Dave. These are the types of moves you have to be willing to make because you weaponize your cap space. You can get something out of it, right? If you're also getting a young player like Savoy in the deal.
So I pulled up Darnell Nurse's edge data. Data? I don't know why
Yeah.
I just said data. Always say data. 96 percentile in max skating speed,
Wow.
23.2 miles an hour.
Wow. So he can still fly.
Yeah, so he's still a top tier skater. 22 mile an hour bursts, 96 percentile, 95th percentile with 20 to 22 mile an hour bursts, 93rd percentile with 18 to 20 mile an hour bursts. So he is a skater.
Yeah.
He fills a ton of needs for the Rangers, and Edmonton looks like they need to clear cap space.
Yeah. It's a discussion worth having, and I think that look again if you pair that, and look, I don't love the idea of the team getting older, but if that move is paired with other
Ooh.
moves that bring in younger players, whether it's Mason McTavish drafting Stenberg second overall because you made that trade with the Sharks, or you're able to pull off like an Eklund trade Um, I just you want to see them build, continue to build a young core beneath a move like that, because you already have Gavrikov, who's over 30. Fox is clearly a veteran. He's in the veteran prime of his career. You don't want to get too old when you're in this phase of a retool, but I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. And even a team like Washington that retooled pretty quickly, or Boston that retooled pretty quickly, like they were not exactly littered with younger players, especially the Bruins. And the Bruins did a pretty quick retool after losing, Brad Marchand.
So I just had an idea, an epiphany. So let you tell me if this makes sense. Nurse and Savoy for Schneider,
Mhm.
Berard, and Dylan Garand. I
Well, that's really
completely forgot Dylan Garand exists.
well. And they've always needed a goalie, so yeah,
And a young goalie, a young cost-controlled right shot defenseman, and a young Brett Berard should probably be NHL, and a young winger who fills out their middle six.
I mean, I almost feel like the Rangers might be overpaying in that instance, and they like Garand too. I think they like Garand. I think they envision him potentially
Mm.
competing for the backup job.
But I love Savoy.
Yeah, right. So that Savoy's really the
Rookie
piece you're
year,
after.
yeah. Savoy's the piece you're after, and Nurse is kind of a nice to have, and somebody
Mhm.
that you could possibly flip in the next couple of years if it's not working out.
For sure.
But Nurse is the cap dump, and Savoy is the real prize.
Right.
And when you're doing that, I still think that because Nurse has value, even if he's a cap dump, he still has value. You can still extract Savoy out of that, but you still have to give to get in this league.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting thought, and I think that again, we're getting into discussions here that we can only hope the Rangers are also having, right? This is how they have to be thinking. It can't just be what can we do to get Alex Tuck here? It can't just be JT will be healthy next year. It can't just be Fox will be healthy next year. It can't just be we'll turn Trocheck into, a one younger forward that's going to help. Like you've got to be more creative. There's got to be more meat on the bone with these moves. And again, because again, like I said, I promised there would be a lot of Knicks connections here. Like everything they did it was so pragmatic. That's the word that, you talk to. I've been listening to a lot of interviews and podcasts. They've talked to Mike Breen. They've talked to all the writers that have covered the team, all the content creators and podcasters like us that do what we do for the Knicks, right? Like everybody just talked about, like, it was extremely pragmatic and it was very patient. And yeah, you look at Matthew Savoy, he's 22 years old. He had 37 points last year. It doesn't jump off the page. And he's undersized, of course, because, every player worth a damn that, might be gettable is undersized, and that rules them out immediately for the Rangers. But, you know, uh, you're banking on upside. It's a premium position, and you have to, like you said, you have to be willing to, not only give to get, but also um, have a vision for your team that goes beyond next season. That's what I think I struggle with when I think about Drury and his ability to do this. Is you can't just be thinking about next season. You have to be thinking about, it's the summer of 2026. Are we in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2028 or 2029 with a chance to keep getting back there? And if that's the case, then you're making moves like this to get Matthew Savoy, and the prize isn't Nurse. The prize is Savoy, to your point.
And then just to expand on that, if you can't find the trade with Trocheck or Schneider that gets you to where you want to be, you take the absolute best offer you're getting, the most
Mhm.
value, even if it doesn't fill a need, and then you take those pieces and you flip them for what you need. I can't believe
Yeah.
these words are coming out of my mouth, but you follow the Vancouver model with that one. I like the general idea of what Vancouver did with the JT Miller trade, which was they extracted value as much as they could out of a guy who only wanted to go to one team, and then they took the first round pick and they flipped it for somebody who thought was going to move the needle for them.
Right.
It didn't work out, but the idea was there. I'm not going to fault a guy. I'm not going to fault Drury for trying something like that. For trying something like, Let's leverage our cap space and Braden Schneider, Savoy, bring in Darnell Nurse as a cap dump, see what happens. Worst case scenario, we trade Nurse and Savoy worked out. Great. If
Yep.
Savoy doesn't work out, you still swung for the fences on a guy that had 18 goals in his rookie year.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I just think that requires foresight. It requires, vision. You have to also be able to read the entire league, right? I think Drury has gotten to a point where, again, he's kind of able to identify the right moves and make them in a vacuum. Again, I always go back to Gaudreau and Trouba, right? Like those were the right moves in a vacuum, but it was the what's next that he got wrong or that he didn't think of. It was like, all right, well, congratulations, Chris, you found a waiver partner for Barclay Goodrow, but what are you doing with that cap space? What are you doing with Trouba's cap space? What are you doing with Kreider's cap space? And none of these very important pieces. Say what you want about Barclay Goodrow, he was an important piece for the Rangers. I know his underlying metrics were bad. He was way overpaid for what he was giving them. The guy still scored 3 or 4 hugely important playoff goals. He was a massive piece of that initial team that turned it around and got in the playoffs in 2022. It wasn't like he came here and did nothing. And I think it's important to remember that. So fine, you want to move on from him because yes, he is overpaid and that money needs to be spent more wisely. What is your plan there? It can't just be like, well, we're going to sign Sam Carrick and he'll be cheaper, but he's not going to give us more. Like that is it's oversimplistic. You just can't think of everything as a one-to-one replacement. And again, think about the Moneyball thing I'm sure the movie oversimplifies it, but Billy Beane explaining to all the people in the room that we are not replacing Jason Giambi with one player. We are trying to recreate him in the aggregate, right? It's like, you can't just excise Barclay Goodrow and Jacob Trouba and be like, yay, great. Now we have $11 million in cap space. It's how do we turn what were $11 million worth of players that were really only giving us $6 million of value into $11 million worth of players that are giving us $20 million of value. And that is the thing that I don't think Chris Drury can do, but that's the thing every good GM does.
Yeah. And he turned those two trades, by the way, into Will Borgen and JT Miller.
Right.
In terms of cap space. Absolutely absurd.
Exactly. So, all right, let's get to the questions because we're already 40 minutes in here. Interested to hear what people want to know.
All right. So there was one on Blue Sky from Dog Hiker 77. This is actually it's a 3-parter. What do you think Drury's shelf life will be if the team doesn't make positive progress next season?
I think there's a chance he's fired. I don't think he's here indefinitely. And, Dolan is patient until he's not. He got very impatient very quickly with Tom Wilson breaking the Rangers and that whole fiasco with the Caps in 2021, right? So I think especially if you hear more fire Drury chants and the building is half empty in February, his shelf life it gets short pretty quickly, I think.
I don't think he gets fired. I think he gets full promoted to president, and somebody else has to hire somebody to be the GM.
Right. That's an interesting way to do it. And that would be very Dolan. He's done that before.
Glenn Sather.
And Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, and Isaiah Thomas. I forgot about Isaiah Thomas. I try to forget about Isaiah Thomas. All right, next question. Also part of this. Should the Rangers overpay for a free agent now or swing a big trade or two instead? I think we covered this kind of.
Overpaying for a single free agent makes absolutely no sense this offseason. It just, you could argue it never makes sense. Look at the teams that are going to be in the finals. I know Carolina's 1 game away. Again, Vegas doesn't overpay free agents. They paid Mitch Marner what he's worth, but that was a trade, wasn't it? They traded for him and then re-signed him.
They traded for his contract rights.
Right.
And then signed him.
It's basically like a trade and sign or sign and trade.
Yeah, basically.
But they do their business through trades. They have a, fuck them picks mentality. They will trade all their draft picks. They don't care. and they will then ruthlessly move off of guys if they have to. They also, can put, Petrangelo and Mark Stone on LTIR whenever they want, apparently. But and Carolina never overpays free agents either. That's just not something they do. Um, I would say it never makes sense. It almost never makes sense. It certainly doesn't make sense this offseason. One free agent is not going to change the trajectory of this team. All of the guys that did fall into that category, Kaprizov, Connor McDavid, are no longer on the market. So there's no point in doing it. No, you've got to try and be shrewd in the trade market, as we just talked about.
And there's only two big name free agents out there. One is Alex Tuck, who's 31 years old and going to get 7 years at $11 million, not what the Rangers need right now. And the other one is Darren Radish, who had one amazing season this year at 30 years old. Hard pass.
That is like signing a baseball player that has hit 12 to 15 home runs every year and then has one season where he hits 41, and it's his contract year. You do not want to be the team that does that.
What was it, Brady Anderson?
Brady Anderson, yeah.
The Baltimore Orioles center fielder, right?
Yes.
Wow.
He had like 52 home runs.
Yeah.
He had like 80 a year. Yeah.
All of his home runs in his career came from 1 year.
Yeah. He was all, I mean, not that he was alone, but there was probably some performance enhancement happening with Brady Anderson that season, would be my guess.
Which probably explains why he fell apart after that year.
Yeah. It explains why he could barely fit in his jersey. I can tell you that.
Well, yeah, fair.
The dude was massive. But yeah, no, I mean, that does happen though. It's sports. Guys have contract years, and there's too many examples of overpaying for them and then not getting that value.
All right. Last question on this post on Blue Sky from Dog Hiker 77. Which younger players do you expect to make the opening night roster next season?
All right. Well, let's go through them. Right?
Let me read them. I'll read anybody under the age of 25.
Yeah.
Alexis Lafreniere.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think Lafreniere will be there too. Next one, Will Cooley.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Matt Rempe.
I'm going to say no.
Really?
Yeah.
I disagree with you. I think they're going to keep Rempe. He's kind of like the team mascot at this point.
Yeah, well, exactly. But look, what was the maybe brightest possible silver lining from last year at the end of the year was that, we might actually have a functional bottom six. And it's kind of fun to watch with Ty Cartier and, a few of those other Adam Sikora, et cetera. It's like, that's what everybody was clinging to at the end of last year as pathetic as that sounds in the moment.
And the top line.
Well, and the top, right. No, fair. I know and the top line was good. Point is that bottom six didn't include Rempe. And look, I'm of two minds with him because I think he does provide value. I think that there was a palpable difference when he was in the lineup, but I think again, he is an example of a player that he's kind of the perfect team mascot on a good team, like the 2024 team. I think when you're actually trying to build a sound operation that is progressing towards competitiveness and sustainability, I don't know that Rempe's the right guy.
So I disagree with you there. I think he will make the team as a 13-14 forward.
Okay.
Which brings me to Adam Edstrom.
I'll say yes, but I think he's the 13th or 14th forward, and it's not Rempe, and they're not both making it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's no way they're keeping both. I think Edstrom has better trade value as the objectively better player when he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Edstrom becomes a sweetener.
Yeah, that's a decent shout.
All right. Gabe Perreault.
Of course. Yeah.
Noah Laba.
Yes. Already in the gym and on the ice, by the way. I love to see it.
Yes, I love that.
He posted something. He was already working out. So love to see it.
Adam Sikora.
I'm going to say yes. He's such a Mike Sullivan player.
Yes. I think he has replaced Brett Berard as that agitator forward.
Mm-hmm.
So sticking with forwards, I'm moving to guys that played a little bit, at least, in the NHL. Yarrow Hemlash.
Uh, yes.
I'm with you there. Brett Berard.
No.
I think he's a sweetener as well.
Yeah.
And just for the hell of it, because he's 25 years old, Yuso Parsonen.
Oh man, probably not. Sounds like an AHL lifer, Yuso Parsonen. Just one of those guys.
Yep. All right, defenseman. Not Braden Schneider,
Traded.
hopefully. Vincent Iorio,
Oh man, have to
your
shout out the
favorite
fact
defenseman.
he was in Off Campus, the hit TV show, which I did watch with my lovely wife. Uh, Hockey romance based on the book, college romance, I think, with hockey sprinkled in is what I would call it. Good show. Honestly, would recommend it. It's definitely cheesy, corny, reminds you a lot of the if you're a millennial of a certain age, kind of the CW type of teenage or college romance.
Oh God.
Uh, yeah, it not without its cheesy moments, but it was a good show. It was well made. Vincent Iorio was the main character's stunt double, so all the hockey scenes that required anything, beyond basic skating were done by Iorio. So,
I
um,
mean, Iorio can't really do basic skating, so
that's that's rough, Dave.
yeah,
Uh,
that was kind of mean. He would
he's
skate circles around me.
he's better than an actor. Let's put it that way.
Yes, he's
Um,
better than all of us. Vincent Iorio
yeah,
is a better skater than all
he's
of
better
us.
than all actors, if we're being honest.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna say yes because he's right-handed and they don't have much on the right side.
I'm gonna say yes, but not for a different reason. And I'm gonna say yes because they're gonna pick him over Scott Morrow.
Well, that's possible too. The
Hmm.
thing about Iorio that frustrates me is that he's enormous, but he doesn't play big. Like and I don't say that like with unrealistic expectations. I'm not one of these, as um, old timers who just wants to see guys like mindlessly hit people. And I don't judge defensemen based on like how often they knock people on their ass, but like there were just lots of examples of him going into corners to battle for pucks and having no worldly clue how to use his body to win the puck battle. Like it was just basic fundamental stuff. And I was like, oh, this is why you've been like waived 3 times. Like you have this big frame and you have no idea how to use it. And the rest of your skills are not good enough to make up for that, right? Like you have to be able to leverage your size if you're Iorio. And if he learns how to do that, maybe he's got a shot because he's righty and he's a decent skater and he can move the puck, but he was quite useless in terms of puck battles and kind of basic defenseman stuff.
Yep. I'm with you there. I hope they find a way just dump him at this point because he's just gonna take up space. All right. Matthew Robertson,
Absolutely.
Drew Fortescue,
Yes.
Scott Morrow.
I guess I have to say no. If I said Iorio was going to make the team, I'll agree with you that Morrow will start the year in the AHL.
I think Morrow is traded in the offseason. I think it's
Wow.
stupid to do this. I
That
think
would
it's
be a loss.
wildly stupid to do it. But I think he's traded in the offseason. I think he is not a Sully player, even though they never really gave him a real shot. I don't think he's a Sully type player. Too many defensive zone mistakes and an unwillingness to deal with it so he could grow
Right.
or deal with
That's
it so that the Rangers have another guy that's not Adam Fox that can move the fucking puck up. Like
yeah.
if Fox is off the ice, the Rangers have what, a 40% shot share? It's
Yes.
absurd.
No, I know. It's true.
All right, and then the last one, Dylan Garand.
If he's not in our hypothetical Darnell Nurse trade, then yeah, I think he's the backup goalie.
Yep, same here. All right, on to the questions on the site. Let me just refresh to make sure I get everything, even though it automatically does it anyway. I don't know why I did that. First question from Spozo. Name one move in the last 20 years that all but negated a cup. I'll go first. 2014, letting Strawman walk so they could sign Dan Boyle.
Yeah. That's an easy one to come back to. Um
Ooh, I got one.
I honestly can't think of one. That's probably the best one. Um,
Uh,
Happy for
I
you to throw out another one.
Same time frame. Extending Dan Girardi instead of trading him to Anaheim for Sammy Vatanen and Devontae Smith-Pelly, which was the rumored trade.
Right. Yeah, and look, Vatanen never really became what his potential could have been. You know, he never met that potential, but you were like you said, you extended Girardi and sort of paid for his decline.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, look, I think I don't want to say that Tanner Glass single-handedly prevented them from winning a cup, but it is just so ironic how, and this is something that, our good friend Rob Luker always points out with the Rangers, it isn't necessarily the top of the roster stuff. Like they generally find their way to get to start players through free agency or, they obviously the goaltending position has been a strength. Adam Fox is an elite defenseman. Like it's not necessarily that stuff. Like especially when they're in those contention windows, they always make these moves on the margins that just weaken their chances of winning by enough of a percentage that it really, really matters. And I think it was so predictable with Glass because that was right when people were really looking at shot share and not quite expected goals and scoring chances yet, although they were tracking scoring chances on, Corsica and some of the old, the old sites. But their team wide 5-on-5 numbers got worse than in 2015 with Glass. And even though he only played 9 or 10 minutes a game like that, it matters. And they went from like a 52.5% shot share team to like a 50.1% shot share team. And then they obviously made the ill-fated decision to scratch James Shepard, dress Tanner Glass, go 11-7 when Ryan McDonough was hurt in game 7 of the conference final. So, look, I don't want to say that Glass specifically and that move specifically prevented them from winning a cup, but you combine that with Strawman extending Girardi, right? Like not making enough moves on the margins to put that team over the top. All those probably add up to that team, which should have won at least one cup, not winning one.
Yep.
It's
All
very
right.
sad.
It's sad.
Another piece of my soul just died having that
And by the
conversation.
way, so all that, by the way, was Jeff Gordon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, like if I could just tee up the next question, I'll be very brief about
Yep.
this. The Canadians are about to get eliminated by Carolina because they've been absolutely dominated at 5-on-5. And I just find it kind of ironic that Jeff Gordon has gone to Montreal. He's built a really solid team. They are fun. They've got a lot of talent. They're not good enough 5-on-5. They don't have anywhere near the depth or high end skill, frankly, to deal with a true contender like the Hurricanes, who have been like this for years, but I think have now finally put it all together. And they are getting blitzed every night. I mean, if you look at the shot totals the last 3 games, it's embarrassing. And even the Rangers, who have always had trouble in this era mustering a lot of attempts on goal and a lot of scoring chances 5-on-5. I think the Canadians in one of these conference final games, I think they had like 6 shots going into the third period. I think it was
Yep.
in. It's pathetic, and that's Jeff Gordon, and he has a very specific type of team that he built. It is built around, yes, skill and speed, and it's fun, and it does result in a lot of offense. But when push comes to shove in the playoffs, there's not enough, uh, substance there, and it's not good enough 5-on-5. And I think that has been his Achilles heel. And to your point, Dave, that it was Jeff Gordon who made those moves. It was Jeff Gordon who was the kind of the initial architect of the more recent teams that were not good enough 5-on-5. And there's an art to building a very good 5-on-5 team that he has not mastered, and that the Rangers, obviously, as a franchise, have not either.
Yep. Okay. On to the next with producer JL Praise Account, who is not JL. 2 questions. First, I've seen a few recent mocks that have the Rangers taking Ilya Morozov with their second first round pick. Any thoughts on him? I know nothing about him.
Same. Sorry.
Sorry. Just a quick primer for folks. 17 years old, turning 18 August 3rd. So he's probably one of the younger guys in the draft. 6'3", 200 pounds, playing at Miami of Ohio. He's a center. 36 games played, 8 goals, 12 assists, 20 points. Worth noting, freshmen in general in the NCAAs don't get many shifts, don't get many puck touches, things like that. So I'd be intrigued to see what he develops into.
Yeah, he's
But
really young too, playing at that
yeah,
age in college. Yeah,
yeah, he's turning 18 in August. So usually turning 18 is when you're a freshman.
right.
Oh, wait, yes. So I said that right. Sorry. Never mind. Again, my brain is not braining. So he played in the USHL 1 year prior. Uh, 11, 11, 22, and 59 games. I don't know much about the USHL, but I'd be intrigued. But he's 4 years away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, I think we're obviously we know they pick fifth. We know there's a chance maybe of trading up. Everybody's very familiar with the top 6 to 8 names on the board at this point. Um, I think we owe it to everybody to do a little bit more research and have a little bit more of a in-depth draft primer, and we can obviously leverage Hope and Will for that deeper coverage. But I definitely am not a draft expert, and I beyond the first pick, I haven't really thought much about what the Rangers are going to do after that.
Yeah, it's been tough to track all that, especially with all the rumors flying around with what the Rangers and Sharks might or might not do. Anyway, second question from producer JL Praise account. It's actually kind of funny. And Rob, this is actually something I've been toying with my girls is I've tried to get my 9-year-old to watch hockey with me, but he has shown little interest. Why watch a great sport when you can watch idiots yelling nonsense on YouTube? Should I keep trying, or would it be kinder to spare him from Ranger fandom?
Um, I think you should keep trying, and this is where I always like to get positive and mushy about this stuff. I think, as much as we can joke about, and we joke about it because it also keeps us from crying at times, but the pain that our sports teams put us through, ultimately, I've gotten so much value out of rooting for the Rangers in my life, right? Like spending so much time with my dad. It's a common thing between my brother and I. It is the subject of multiple group chats. It's how I met my wife. I have already taken my daughter, my 5 soon to be 6-year-old, to a handful of games. We will let her stay up on occasional nights when they have a 7 o'clock game and watch the first period. She loves it. She's really young. I don't know if she'll continue to love it as she gets older, but I think she understands kind of like that it is a common bond, and we put a Ranger flag up outside of our house. We have it mounted outside the garage. Goes up every October 1st. It stays up until the team's eliminated and the season's over. It's been replaced with a Knicks flag, coincidentally, this year, which is thankfully still up. But you know, uh, there's so much more positive than negative to be gotten out of it. Now, look, we care a lot. We care a lot about the results. I desperately want to see this team win another Stanley Cup. I was 9 years old when the only one in the modern era happened. Um, but it's still so much fun, and there really is like a community of fans out there that make it worthwhile. Especially when you get off of Twitter and when you actually like talk to people. If you can go to games, I know it's expensive, but also if you're willing to go in the winter time and the team's not very good and you're willing to sit in the 200s, like it's a blast. It's a great live sport. I think if that's one way to get your 9-year-old into it too, if you live somewhat close, is buy a ticket and go to a game, and bring your kid to the game, because there's no live sport better than hockey there. And I love all sports, but there's nothing's better than live hockey. So I say yes. That's me being positive and mushy in the face of the Rangers, potentially staring down a pretty lean period here.
Yep. I say yes too because my oldest is going to go to kindergarten next year. We're going to have to start shifting her bedtime away from the 7:30 window, probably closer to the 8:30 window, which means like you, Rob, I'll be able to sit and watch the first period with her.
Hmm.
And I just want to see what she does because it's more than just being miserable as a Ranger fan. I mean, I am not going to subject her to being a Mets fan. I'm not going to subject her to being a Jets fan because, no offense to Met fans, I just feel bad for you guys at this point because you get Hope and then you get the Mets and Jets. The Jets are the Jets. I mean, I'm not going to subject her to those, but it's you meet people. There are a lot of good fans out there. Obviously, I've been running this site since 2008.
Crazy.
it would be great for me to have my daughters know what I do as a hobby and why I've spent the better part of 20 years now writing about this team and have that connection with them. I'd love to have that.
Yeah.
And
Also,
then we can
side note,
lament about how much they suck.
right, right. And look, I mean, look, I have a great relationship with, um, my dad, and I think there's a lot of father son, grandfather grandson. That's mothers and sons, mothers and daughters, all of that with sports. And we talk about other things, but it's become such a thing we can go back to. I mean, pretty much anytime we talk about the Rangers. It comes up no matter what. Even in the middle of the summer, it's like, hey, only a couple months away. The Rangers will be skating soon. Like there's just this mutual excitement all the time about it. Side note, Dave, I think we do need to start planning already. Not maybe not start planning, but thinking about some sort of Blue Sea Blog's 20th anniversary party. Just put that in the back of your mind.
That is a good idea.
I
Work
think we got
at
to do
that
it.
point should hopefully slow down in 2028, where
Yeah.
it's just crazy right now and it's not going away in the next year. And the girls will be old enough. I think that's a good idea. Maybe I'll win the lottery and I can get a box for everybody to go join and old writers and new and current writers just all enjoy.
That'll be fun. All right.
Yeah.
Moving
All
on.
right, next question. Two line passes. With so much cap space available, who's the UFA big splash that we sign?
Well, we just said that they shouldn't do this, but obviously Alex Tuck would be the guy. I mean, there's just USA hockey connections and sort of it would be very Rangers to do it. I hope they don't, but there's certainly a chance it happens.
Yeah. So there's the splash that we think they're going to do, which is obviously Tuck, and then there's the splash that I hope they do, but won't, which is McTavish.
Yeah.
All right. A bunch of replies to that. All right. Next one, Power Kill Rangers. I actually like that name.
Yeah.
Gabe Perreault is eligible for an extension on July 1st. Is that true? Hold on.
I don't know.
Uh, I think it's January 1st because he still has another year left on his contract. I think it's January. I honestly don't know. The new CBA, I just haven't had time to look at it. Either way, he's eligible for an extension. What do you think a long-term deal should look like?
This is interesting because obviously the point of if you were to do this, first of all, it's a great time to do it because you're still in theory building your next core, and it gives you the ability to sort of like pre-save cap space as you pursue big names, as you pursue the middle, build out the middle of your roster. You're seeing this happen a lot in baseball too, where guys are getting these really long, contracts. And they're generally top prospects or guys that have 1 or 2 years of experience at the major league level. And, look, obviously baseball is completely different economically, but the top free agents in baseball now sign for, $30 to $50 million a year. And these younger guys are signing for, they're signing 10-year contracts for 25 million a year, right? They're getting 10-year 250 or 10-year, like 180, like that kind of contract. So, for Perreault, if he was willing to take it, could you get him for 6 years, 5.5 million per, right? Like something like that. And just lock him up through his 20s. And, you're basically guaranteeing him, $30 million up front, still a chance to hit free agency in his late 20s, and really cash in. Would he take that? That seems to me in the ballpark, but maybe I'm way off on that.
So I have Evolving Hockey's contract projections up. Now, because Perot's not an RFA this year, this has to be taken with a grain of salt. You said 6 years, right?
I did, yeah.
6.7 million is the Evolving Hockey estimate.
Wow. Okay. So I said 5.5. Maybe it's cool. Yeah. So fine. If it's 6.25, 6.5, that's fine. Yeah.
I would do 5 years because he's 21 years old, and I want to get him through age 26 so that they have another contract to keep him if he turns out to be what they want him to be.
Right.
The other option for me is just go full 8 years, 29, take him to 29 years old. Evolving Hockey has him at 7.85 million. I would do that. I would prefer 7 million, 8 years, 7 million, 7 years, 7 million, somewhere in that
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
range.
yeah.
But I would do that.
Yeah, I would too.
He's everything I've seen from him. I absolutely love.
He's such a quick study. That's the thing about him that I think was so encouraging is that it took the first 20 games for him to just settle in and understand. And once that happened, there was just like not incremental is the wrong word. There was steady improvement and noticeable improvement game over game, week over week. There was just he's such a quick learner. And I also trust him to do the right things physically, right? He knows he has to get bigger. He's never going to be the fastest, but can he, increase his quickness? Can he just be a little bit quicker, moving his feet quicker with the puck on his stick? That'll make a world of difference. But there, all the tools are there for him to be a very, very good offensive player, and in the league.
Yep. I am in big support of a Gabe Perreault long-term Gabe Perreault extension.
Yeah,
I don't think they should wait either. I think they should do this now.
no, I agree.
All right. Last question from Nikki70. It's a two-parter. First, would you be happy with Alex Tuck and his accompanying age and cap hit if Drury signed him? Let's assume that by that we mean 7 years, 11 million a year.
That contract specifically is a hard no for me. I mean, just Tuck the player, like he'd be fine for the first few years. The problem is that how does this help you retool the team? Like to me, this is not a retool move. This is a move that a team who is more of a contender makes. And it's a move that the Flyers make. Like he makes perfect sense for the Flyers to me. Like the Flyers just made the playoffs. They had this nice second half. They won a round. They've got some decent young pieces. Look, personally, I'm not saying this. Like, I don't think the Flyers are particularly good. But like, or the Islanders, right? The Islanders were in playoff position most of the year. They fell off. They didn't really have enough offense. That's the kind of move that those teams would make. It just doesn't make any sense for the Rangers. It's only a fit because it's the type of silly move that the Rangers have historically made. It doesn't mean they need to keep making that silly move. So I'm not in favor at all. No.
Yeah, I want nothing to do with Tuck. Absolutely nothing. And it's not the player. It's he's 31 years old. What are we
Yes.
doing here? Let's have a plan and a vision, not just throw shit at a wall and hope that the 1998 to 2004 approach will work again. Hey, it
Right.
didn't work for them. Why it could work for us though.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. No, that's exactly it. It just, you know, uh, and I think he's a flawed player. Like, part of the reason Buffalo didn't advance beyond Montreal is that their top line was awful in that series. They were underwater and they were getting rocked by the Canadiens' bottom six, which is not very good. So, like, let's understand what we're looking at here. Where Tage Thompson, who's a very very good player, he played with I think it was Krebs and Tuck, and that line was awful for 5 of the 7 games they played in that series. I'm a hard pass on Tuck.
Yeah.
So,
And the second part of this, I'm going to rephrase this because we're so anti-Tuck signing. Would you prefer that the Rangers go for Jason Robertson in a trade instead of the Alex Tuck signing, if you had to pick one? And why would you prefer the Robertson trade? And why would you prefer? And if the answer is neither, why? So I think this is kind of a two-parter. How would we feel about a Robertson trade? And then why we would prefer neither.
yeah, I mean, look, Robertson's an elite scorer. He is entering the prime of his career. He's the exact type of star player that can turn this ship around pretty quickly, or would help turn this ship around pretty quickly. I'm not getting my hopes up about that because I just think it's unrealistic. But look, I would there's very few players on the roster I wouldn't give up for Jason Robertson in a trade. So yeah, I'd be thrilled. There's nothing else to say about that. I would be absolutely thrilled if they could get Jason Robertson. I just think it's highly unlikely.
So in order to get Jason Robertson, given where Dallas is with the cap, which is basically they're fucked. They need to do something. You're giving them cheap scoring. So that's Gabe Perreault. In order
Yep.
to land Robertson, you have to give them Perot. You probably have to give them one of the defense prospects, considering how screwed they are on right defense. Let's just go with Morrow in this case. So you're looking at Perot, Morrow, and more. The
Yeah.
Rangers, honest, given that the Rangers don't have the more aspect of this, let's drop Morrow from the equation. Perot and the fifth overall for Jason Robertson is probably what you're looking at.
Yeah. And is that valuable? I guess maybe. And then I don't know.
That's so tough.
I don't know. Does Dallas want draft picks right now?
I mean, the fifth overall can be used to go get something else.
Right.
But again, this goes back to the creativity thing. Do they go and trade Jason Robertson for event essentially Perot, take that fifth overall pick and go send it to, I don't know, Anaheim for Mason McTavish? I don't know. Pick something
Right.
here.
Right.
Pick one of these teams that could really use a pick and has cheaper talent to spare. I don't know.
Right.
Fine.
Right. Because they
Spencer
want to
Miller.
draft a defenseman fifth overall that they think can help soon. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
mean, look, I mean, would I trade Perot for? Absolutely. Like I wouldn't think twice. I don't, that doesn't strike me as enough. You also need to sign Jason Robertson, which the Rangers have the cap space to do. So that's not necessarily an issue. But again, you're trying to build a team here that can compete year over year over year, like the Carolina Hurricanes. I hate to keep referencing them, like the Vegas Golden Knights. And Robertson's one piece that certainly gets you closer to that, but there's more work to be done. And then your pipeline takes a massive hit because it's already not that strong. And Perot's your best. He's your best prospect. I know he's basically an NHLer at this point, but of the young players in your cupboard, he's the best one. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, look, I would do it because I think true star power is the trump card here. But I also
I mean,
I
it
also
gives
think there's so
you,
much more to do.
if you think about it, let's say the Rangers do it. They have their core under 20, under 30 guys of well, I mean, Igor is Igor. You got Fox and Gav, not under 30. You got your core guys basically going into next season. Igor, Fox, Gavrikov, Robertson, Lafreniere,
Yeah.
Mika.
Yep.
And then you still
Yeah.
have guys like Laba, and you still have the bottom six, which should be fine. But now you're still left with JT Miller and nobody.
Right. And like a defense that needs to be completely built out beyond Fox and
Yep,
Gavrikov.
exactly. So you're still left with the same situation. You just instead replace, you basically just found an Artemi Panarin replacement, and
Yes.
it cost you your best prospect and the fifth overall pick.
Exactly right. That's the best way. That's the best way to put it. And that to me just means you're going backwards at that point.
Yep. And it's funny how, well, we're in May. So it's funny how 5 months ago, January, we were still talking favorably about possibly landing Jason Robertson and how there are ways to make it work. And now 5 months later, the entire situation has changed and it doesn't really make sense anymore.
Totally. And I think that that's where, again, the patience has to come into play here. Because sure, like, would I be absolutely jacked if I, you know, it came across, our Blue Sky and Twitter and whatever you're on social and you see the Rangers traded for Jason Robertson, you'd be thrilled, and it would be really exciting, and it would be something for the fan base to hang its hat on. And I think it probably would have good early returns, but you also have to remember, like, Panarin signed as a free agent here and didn't make the playoffs for a couple of years. Um, this team it would not be any closer to a playoff spot if they just brought in Jason Robertson. And as you said, it cost them Pro in the fifth overall pick. I think you've got to try and do this a little bit more patiently. That's the word I keep coming back to. And Robertson is more of a quick fix. Whereas like the Nyes trade, to me, that's a piece towards the future that you know what I mean? Like the hypothetical Nyes trade we talked about earlier. You're not sacrificing a draft pick because the Leafs don't need a draft pick. You know, you're adding the right type of forward at the right age. you know, I don't know. Could you get if you could get Nyes and Robertson, then you're talking. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, you need something in addition to Robertson. So if it's
Right.
Nyes, if it's Wright, if it's McTavish,
Yep.
those three to me are a pick one. Anyone, I'm good with it. But now I just don't see how the Rangers can do that. Shuffle all those chairs and still make it work. I don't. Maybe they do, but I just don't see Dallas giving up Robertson, and I don't see the Rangers giving up the fifth overall pick either.
Right.
No
No, it's
creativity.
interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, no, for sure. All right, great questions. That was good stuff.
Yep, great. That was the end of it.
All right. Um, Great show as always. Went for a
Yeah.
long time here, Dave. Any final thoughts?
Yes. One, after the news today of Claude Lemieux committing suicide,
Very sad.
very sad. Um, just remember, hug your loved ones, make sure they know they're loved. And for people that you may be running into in the street, or even your friends that may have let you down recently, just remember you don't know everything going on in somebody's life. And it's more likely that people are too focused in their own world to know or to even recognize that they may have slighted you. Don't chalk up to, I guess, hate when you could chalk up to ignorance.
Yeah,
Most
I
people in
think
this
that's
world aren't evil bodied people. They're just wrapped up in their own shit. And just take a step back and realize that. And, you know, it's okay to be the first to reach out to somebody. You haven't spoken to a friend in a while, just say, "Hey, what you up to? How you been?" It's okay
yeah,
to do that.
yeah. And look, I mean, it was really sad, shocking news, with Claude Lemieux, and I think look, a lot of people hated him as a player. He was one of the ultimate pests in the NHL, but really fascinating stuff with the 30 for 30 that they did about the Avalanche Red Wings rivalry, and him and Chris Draper like basically burying the hatchet as part of that whole thing was really good. If you haven't seen that, you should
Yeah.
go watch it. Um,
He was a good dude off the ice. I mean,
he was a really good dude off the ice.
I've shared that story about when I was lucky enough to go to a thing with Brian Leach and Don Mattingly, and I asked, this is 2010, and I asked Brian Leach if he could spear anybody in the NHL with no repercussions, who would it be? And he said Claude Lemieux, but only because I'm friends with him now.
Right. Right. Yeah. So got fierce competitor on the ice and would do anything it took to win. Good guy off the ice. But look, and who know, look, it's there's been a lot of hockey players who have taken their own lives over the years now, and it's really sad. And look, I don't know who knows what the cause was there, but um, like you said, Dave, you don't know what people have going on in their lives. It's good to check in with people. It's good to continuously um have human connections and think about the people that you come across in your life as humans, and have a little bit of grace and dignity with the people you're around. No, tough loss, tough news. And again, all my friends and family that I talk hockey with everyone were pretty shocked and saddened by that one. So rest in peace, Claude Lemieux. No, that was a good final thought, and one to definitely one to remember here as we wrap up. But yeah, no, I appreciate everyone listening as always. We love doing this. We'll be back next week with another episode of Live from the Blue Seats.